All right, welcome back, everyone. Today's explainer is, well, it's going to completely rewire how you think about reading, writing, and, honestly, the media you consume every single day. We're diving into the literary present from classic canon to digital code. We are basically going to systematically deconstruct those old, kind of dusty, elitist definitions of traditional literature and really look at what storytelling actually means today. So, let's jump right in.
Let me just hit you with a question, right out of the gate. One that might make a traditional English professor twitch a little bit. Are Wattpad stories literature? Really think about it. When literally millions of people are eagerly reading a serialized romance on their smartphones, does that actually count as a literary experience? Or, is it just digital junk food?
Because today, we're talking about things like serialized manga, online fan fiction, graphic novels, heck, even Facebook poetry. For decades, the academic establishment would have firmly, and I mean firmly, placed these outside the sacred walls of real literature. But today, those boundaries are being severely tested. Do these diverse modern formats actually count? Well, to figure that out, we kind of have to look at how we even define the word to begin with.
Which brings us to Section 1, Redefining Modern Literature.
You see, we need to stop looking at the literary present as this static, frozen historical era. It's a living, breathing thing. Think of it like a giant filtration process for the question, what is literature? In the past, someone created a piece of media, and it had to pass through these incredibly rigorous, almost impossible filters, like does it have to be written down, or can it be spoken word? If it actually appeals to the mass market, does it automatically lose its literary value? And who even gets to decide what counts? The reading public? Or just a few academic institutions? What we're seeing right now is that the definition of literature is no longer a fixed set of rules. It is continuously negotiated. It acts like a living mirror, just reflecting the immediate messy complexities of our modern society.
Moving on to Section 2, Forces Reshaping the Landscape.
So how exactly did we get from those super rigid rules to this constant negotiation? Well, to understand the massive macro forces that broke down all that traditional gatekeeping, we have to look at what we call the postmodern bridge. Postmodernism really kicked off around 1945, and it started actively challenging traditional authority and, questioning the whole idea of objective truth. Writers just started experimenting heavily with how a story could even be told. That fragmentation of absolute truth back in the 20th century, that literally laid the necessary foundation for the absolute explosion of diverse digital voices we are seeing today in the 21st century.
And look at how aggressively this timeline accelerates. We go from postmodernism questioning truth up through the 1980s, right into globalization in the 90s, which forged these unprecedented cross-cultural connections. Then boom, the 2000s hit. The internet revolution gives birth to online publishing. The 2010s bring us the social media era, giving us viral formats and mass sharing. And now, here in the 2020s, we actually have AI and digital culture actively generating narratives. It's a literal escalation curve, showing exactly how technology rapidly accelerated our literary evolution.
Now, this crazy, rapid evolution, it really rests on three massive pillars: globalization, digital technology, and identity movements. Globalization means a Filipino author can write about the overseas worker experience and instantly share it with the entire world. Digital technology allows formats like ebooks and audiobooks to completely bypass traditional print altogether. And identity movements? They amplify underrepresented voices: women, LGBTQ+ communities, indigenous peoples. The key takeaway here is that these macro forces didn't just change how we read, they completely changed who gets to be read.
All right, let's jump into Section 3, the new literary taxonomy.
With all this democratization happening, those old academic labels just don't work anymore. Period. So, we can build a sort of diagnostic matrix to break the literary present down into three core categories. First up, contemporary literature. Its primary goal is to address current issues, its defining trait is relevance, and it uses traditional or mixed mediums. Think of a novel about social media addiction. Next, we have popular literature. The goal here is just pure entertainment. The trait is massive reach through the mass market, like a best-selling detective story. Finally, emergent literature. This one actively seeks to innovate. Its defining trait is the format itself, and it is exclusively digital. A great concrete example of this? Interactive Instagram poetry.
To really ground this framework and make it concrete, let's look at some highly relatable examples from the Philippines. Contemporary texts like Luwalhati Bautista's Decada 70 or F.H. Patakin's Smaller and Smaller Circles are doing exactly what contemporary literature is designed to do. They address intensely complex societal themes, like the harsh realities of martial law, migration, or modern identity. They act as a direct, unflinching mirror to society's current issues.
Now, contrast that with popular literature, which relies on massive commercial successes driven purely by mass entertainment. We're talking about huge Wattpad hits like Diary Nampangit or the wildly successful graphic novel series Treze. Now, these aren't necessarily trying to be highbrow political critiques, right? Their primary goal is to entertain audiences, and honestly, they do it exceptionally well. They reach millions of readers and frequently get adapted into major movies and series.
Which leads us directly into Section 4, the culture debate. Because let's be real, you literally cannot have this kind of massive cultural disruption without some serious pushback. How does traditional academia actually react to all this? Well, the traditional view enforces a very strict separation based on perceived intellectual value. The idea was that Shakespeare and classical poetry are high culture and therefore valuable, while comics and romance novels are low culture, meant just for mass consumption. But check out the modern view. We are finally seeing an institutional embrace. Those old boundaries are dissolving fast. The modern view argues that the format absolutely does not dictate the intellectual worth of a story. Graphic novels and popular fiction are now studied seriously alongside the traditional canon in major universities all over the world.
Think of it like a cultural spectrum slider. We aren't erasing high culture or throwing out canonical novels, not at all. Instead, we are just expanding the middle ground. Things like critically acclaimed graphic novels or prestige television dramas sit comfortably right in that expanding center. Mass entertainment formats are increasingly achieving high culture academic status. So it's no longer an either-or situation, it's very much a yes and.
Let's pull all these concepts together in Section 5, the convergence zone.
So, where does all of this actually intersect in the real world? Let's take a Wattpad romance story as our subject. It's published natively on a digital platform, so boom, it's emergent. It is commercially successful and widely read by the masses, so it's clearly popular. But it might also deal with very real, modern societal issues, bringing it perfectly into the contemporary sphere as well. A single work can live right in the dead center of this convergence zone, proving once and for all that our old, rigid academic boxes just do not apply anymore.
When we look at the convergence of canon and code, it becomes super obvious that technology and globalization haven't destroyed the literary canon. Actually, scratch that, they've just created new steps. Digital distribution acts like this massive escalator, allowing what was once dismissed as low culture, mass consumption, to entirely bypass the old traditional gatekeepers. And once it proves its cultural impact, it steps right up into academic recognition. Technology didn't destroy the canon, it democratized it. Ultimately, the literary present is shaped way more by technology than by tradition. Literature is actively evolving, right now, to mirror societal change. Popularity and format no longer exclude a piece of work from having incredibly deep academic or cultural value. So, as we wrap up this explainer, the question I want to leave you with is this. As the boundaries between canon and code continue to completely blur, how are you going to redefine literature in your own life moving forward? Are you ready to look at your social media feed as the next great anthology? Thanks for joining me today, and hey, keep questioning everything you read.